She dropped out of university so her brother could graduate. She sold her admission letter, her dreams, and 4 years of her life, just to make sure he finished. The day he walked across that stage in his gown and cap, she stood at the back of the congregation hall, clapping louder than anyone. Then he looked at her in front of everyone, professors, classmates, their mother, and said the words that stopped time. "Why did you even come here? Look at you. You're ugly. You're an embarrassment. You look like a pig." Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. And that was the day the quiet girl who never asked for anything finally decided she had asked for enough. Her name was Adaize. Not the kind of name people forget. The kind that sits in the mouth like something sweet, something that was given with intention. Her mother, Mama Okonko, had named her that at dawn, on the morning she was born, when the light came through the window of their one-room apartment in Enugu and fell across the baby's face like a blessing. Adaize, daughter of the king. But there had never been a king in their house. There had been a father who left when Adaize was 9 and her brother Emeka was 6. And there had been Mama, wide-shouldered, soft-voiced, always smelling of palm oil and the morning. And there had been the two of them, Adaize and Emeka, the girl and the boy. From the beginning, something was understood without being said. Emeka was the one who would go far. Emeka was the one with the sharp eyes and the fast tongue and the way of walking into a room and making the room rearrange itself around him. Teachers loved Emeka. Neighbors praised Emeka. Mama spoke of Emeka's future the way some women spoke of God, with total and unquestioning faith. Adaize never minded. Or she told herself she never minded, which is a different thing. But she was 17 when she learned that difference, and by then she had already made her peace with it. She was the firstborn, she was the responsible one. These were facts, not complaints. When Adaize sat for her JAMB examination the year she turned 18, she scored 279. Her guidance teacher called it extraordinary. The University of Nigeria, Nsukka, offered her a place in the Faculty of Law. She read the admission letter 6 times the evening it arrived, pressing the paper flat against the table, reading her own name on it like something she was afraid to believe. Adaize Okonko, Faculty of Law, first year. Mama cried, not from happiness alone, from the complicated emotion of a woman who loves fiercely and calculates quietly. Because there was Emeka. Emeka was also just gained admission. Emeka, who was offered a place to study engineering at Enugu State University. Emeka's school fees were not small. 2 children, 2 admissions, 1 mother's salary from a fabric shop that barely covered rent. The mathematics was brutal and simple. Adaize saw it on her mother's face before Mama could even open her mouth. She saw the way her mother looked at both admission letters side by side on the table, the way her hands trembled slightly, the way she said, "We will find a way," with her eyes saying something entirely different. That night, Adaize lay in the narrow bed she had shared with her mother since childhood, and she counted the ceiling cracks in the dark. She was not crying. She was deciding. By morning, she had made the decision. She told Mama quietly over tea, before Emeka woke up, before the day had a chance to offer any other options. "I will defer my admission. Emeka will go first. When he finishes and starts working, then I will go." Mama held both her hands and said nothing for a long time. "Are you sure?" "I am sure." She was not sure, but she said it like she was, and in the African tradition of women who love beyond themselves, the saying of it made it true. So Emeka went to university. Adaize went to work. She started at a fabric shop, not unlike the one Mama worked at, standing on her feet from 7 in the morning until the market closed. She learned to count bolts of Ankara, to negotiate with suppliers, to smile at difficult customers without letting her eyes harden. After 8 months, she moved to a small accounting firm as a clerical assistant, lying gently on her CV about her qualifications, writing awaiting resumption where it asked about university, which was not entirely a lie. She sent money home every month. She paid Emeka's school fees. She bought his textbooks. When he called in his second year to say he needed a laptop for his final project, she saved for 4 months and sent him the money. She did all of this quietly. She did not post about it. She did not bring it up at family gatherings. She did not lean on the sacrifice like some people lean on wounds, for sympathy, for leverage. She simply did it, the way a foundation does its work, unseen, unthanked, holding everything up. The only person who saw clearly was their childhood neighbor, Mrs. Chuku, a wide woman with a sharp tongue and a kind heart, who once stopped Adaize on the street and said, "Nne, you know what you are doing for that boy. God is watching." Adaize smiled politely and said, "He is my brother," as if that explained everything, as if love was its own complete answer. During those 4 years, she watched her former classmates on social media, photographs from campus, convocation announcements, law school updates, NYC postings. She did not feel jealousy exactly. It was more like standing outside a warm building in the cold, pressing your hand to the glass, understanding the warmth exists without being able to feel it. She was 22 when Emeka entered his final year. She was 23 when he began his project. She was 24, thin and quiet and still, the day Emeka Okonkwo defended his final thesis and passed. His result came back on a Thursday. He called Adaize first. She heard the joy in his voice, cracking, electric, barely contained, and she sat down on the edge of her small bed in her rented room in Enugu, and she pressed the phone to her ear, and she felt something enormous rise in her chest. Pride. The real kind, the kind that has no jealousy in it at all. "You did it," she whispered. "We did it, sister, we did it." She did not sleep that night. Not from sadness, from something she had not felt in 4 years, something that felt distantly like hope. Convocation was in 6 weeks. Mama was already planning her outfit. Adaize ironed her best dress, the navy blue one with white trim that she had bought secondhand 2 years ago and saved for important occasions. And she told herself that 6 weeks was enough time to prepare to be proud. She did not know she was also preparing to be destroyed. The convocation morning arrived bright and loud, the way important days in Nigeria tend to arrive, with heat, color, generator noise from every direction, and the particular energy of families who have sacrificed long and are now finally, publicly being rewarded. The university compound was full. Mothers in their finest lace, fathers with cameras they barely knew how to use, siblings in their second-best clothes. The air smelled of food from the pepper soup vendors near the gate, of perfume and hot sun and celebration. Adaize arrived early. She had taken a bus from Enugu at 5:30 in the morning to make sure she was there before the proceedings began. She wore her navy blue dress. She carried a small bouquet of flowers she had bought from the roadside, yellow and white, wrapped in cellophane, because she had wanted to give him something. Mama arrived an hour later in a hired car with 2 aunties and a cousin who had insisted on coming once they heard. Mama's gele was high and copper gold, her wrapper rich burgundy Ankara. She looked, Adaize thought, exactly like a woman who had earned this moment. They found seats near the middle of the congregation hall. The hall was enormous, rows upon rows of white plastic chairs under a vast canopy, a raised stage at the front where the university officials sat in their academic regalia. A banner stretched across the back of the stage, Faculty of Engineering, Convocation Ceremony. Emeka's name was in the printed program. Adaize read it 3 times. She had paid for the suit he was wearing today. She had paid for his final year hostel fees. She had quietly, without announcement, funded the last 4 pages of the story that was about to reach its public ending. When the graduates processed in, robed, capped, walking in the slow, formal shuffle of people who have arrived at something, she stood up without meaning to. She found him in the 3rd row, taller than she remembered, his shoulders broader. His face, beneath the mortarboard,
wearing an expression she had not seen before. Something between pride and performance, something she couldn't name. She waved. He did not see her, or perhaps he did not look. The ceremony ran for 2 hours. Names were called, degrees were conferred, applause rose and fell like tide. Adaize clapped for every name, not only her brother's, because she understood what it meant to make it to this stage, what invisible costs were carried behind every face. When Emeka Okonkwo was called, Mama grabbed Adaize's arm so tightly it left a mark. "That is my son. That is my son." The auntie screamed. The cousin took videos on 3 different phones. Adaize stood straight, both hands pressed together, clapping hard, her eyes full, though she was not crying. She would not cry here. This was not a place for her tears. This was his moment. Emeka walked across the stage, received his scroll, shook the vice-chancellor's hand, turned to face the audience with a smile so wide it seemed to contain everything. Then the ceremony ended and the crowd broke apart into 100 private celebrations. Families rushing to find their graduates, photographs being taken, food being unpacked. Noise and joy and relief flooded the compound. Mama found Emeka first. Adaize held back. She always held back in these moments. She was not a person who rushed to the center of things. She waited, flowers in hand, while Mama embraced him and the aunties embraced him and the cousin photographed everything. Then she stepped forward. "Emeka," she said, smiling, "congratulations." He looked at her. She had expected joy, or at minimum, warmth, the way he had sounded on the phone when his results came. "Sister, we did it." She had been replaying those words for 6 weeks like a song. But he was not alone. Beside him stood a group she had not noticed before. 3 young men in expensive traditional wear, and beside them, 2 women in elaborate lace and gold jewelry. One of the women was holding Emeka's arm in the particular way that suggested closeness, intimacy. Girlfriend, Adaize understood immediately. New money, new world. Emeka looked at Adaize. Then he looked at his woman beside him. Then he looked at his friends. Something shifted in his face. Something small and mean, the way a light can change in a room when a cloud passes over the sun. "Are you sure this is your guest?" one of the friends said, looking at Adaize's second-hand dress, her cheap flowers, her sensible flat shoes. The friend's voice carried the particular cruelty of young men who have newly acquired wealth and not yet grown old enough to be ashamed of it. Emeka did not correct him. He laughed instead, a short, careless sound, and then, with his mother standing 2 feet away, with the aunties and the cousin and 50 strangers within hearing, he said it. "Why did you even come here? Look at you. You are ugly. You are embarrassment. You look like a pig." Silence. The absolute concrete silence of 30 people hearing something they could not believe. Adaize stood still. The flowers were in her hand. The cellophane crinkled softly. She did not cry. She did not speak. She looked at her brother, really looked at him, the way you look at a map when you realize you have been reading it upside down. Then she nodded once, very slowly, turned, and walked away through the crowd. Mama called after her. She did not stop. She walked past the pepper soup vendors at the gate. She walked past the buses. She kept walking until the noise of the ceremony was gone, and it was just her, and the road, and the afternoon heat, and the flowers still in her hand, ridiculous and yellow, bought for a person who no longer existed. She sat down at a bus stop, and she placed the flowers beside her on the bench, and she breathed. She did not scream, she did not collapse. She simply sat with the full weight of it. 4 years, every naira, every deferred dream, every morning she had woken up in a rented room and told herself it would be worth it. And she let the weight be what it was. Then she took out her phone and made a call. Not to her mother, not to a friend. She called a number she had been given 3 months ago by a woman at her office, a woman named Mrs. Obiora, who ran a scholarship foundation for working-class women who had disrupted their education for family obligations, a woman who had told Adaeze, "Whenever you are ready, the door is open." "Mrs. Obiora," she said when the line connected, "I am ready."
Here is what nobody at the convocation hall knew about Adaeze Okonkwo. In the 2 years before her brother's graduation, she had not only been working, she had been building. The way termites build, invisibly inside walls that appear solid, until one day the structure reveals itself and everyone is astonished that so much was happening in the silence. She had taken night classes, 3 evenings a week at a private college in Enugu, studying business administration and accounting, paying for it herself from her salary, telling no one because she had learned long ago that when you announce plans to people who do not believe in you, they find ways to reduce them. She had received her professional certificate 8 months before convocation. She had placed it quietly in the drawer beside her bed and continued going to work and sending money home and being, to all appearances, the same Adaeze, small, responsible, invisible. Mrs. Obiora's Scholarship Foundation operated in partnership with 2 universities. One of them, the University of Nigeria, Nsukka, had a mature student admission program, specifically designed for candidates who had previously gained and deferred admission for documented family or financial reasons. Adaeze had deferral documentation. She had her original admission letter, she had her certificate and her years of professional experience, and 2 reference letters, one from the accounting firm, one from Mrs. Obiora herself, and she had a score from a preparatory assessment she had taken quietly 4 months ago that placed her, in the language of the assessors, in the exceptional category. She had been waiting, not for permission, for the right moment to step back into her own life without asking anyone to make room. The call she made at the bus stop began the final sequence. Mama telephoned that same evening, her voice cracked and strange, oscillating between grief and fury. What Emeka said was wrong. It was wrong. Adaeze, please come back. Let us talk. But Adaeze was calm, in a way that frightened her mother more than tears would have. "Mama, I am fine. I will call you soon." She was not performing calm. She was calm. The kind of calm that comes when a person has made a decision so total that the emotions have not yet caught up with it, and when they do arrive, they will find the infrastructure already laid, the path already chosen, the destination already known. In the weeks that followed, 2 things happened. The first, Adaeze received her formal admission offer to study law at the University of Nigeria, Nsukka, the same faculty, the same university, the same dream she had folded and put away at 18. She was 24 now. The dream had waited. The full scholarship covered tuition, accommodation, and a monthly stipend. Mrs. Obiora's foundation covered textbooks and incidentals. Adaeze was not going as a deferred ghost of her younger self. She was going as a woman with a professional certificate, 4 years of real-world experience, and a fury refined into something clear and quiet and useful. The second thing that happened was slower, stranger, and more complete. When the story of what Emeka had said began to move through the family, and these things always move, always, through aunties and cousins and the aunties of cousins and the old women who sell beside the fabric shop, it did not move the way Emeka had perhaps imagined it would. It did not pass quietly, absorbed into the noise of celebration. It moved instead like smoke, low and persistent, finding every crack. The girlfriend heard it differently from different people and began to ask her own questions. She was from a family that valued character. Her father was a retired judge who had built his reputation on the principle that a man who humiliates those beneath him will eventually humiliate those beside him. He asked Emeka about it once, plainly and directly, and he minimized and deflected, and she heard the minimizing more clearly than any answer. They separated 4 months after convocation.
Emeka never fully understood why. His company interviews did not go as well as he expected. This had many causes: the economy, his field, ordinary difficulty. But there was one cause he did not account for. Mrs. Obiora's foundation had a sister organization that ran a professional mentorship program for engineering graduates. It was well connected. It placed young engineers in good positions. Emeka applied and was shortlisted. He made it to the final round interview. The interviewer was a soft-spoken woman in her 50s with pearl stud earrings and a calm, unhurried manner. She reviewed his documents with care. She asked good questions. He answered confidently. At the end, she thanked him and said they would be in touch. She was Mrs. Obiora. She knew exactly who Emeka Okonkwo was. He was not selected for the program. He never knew why. There was no letter of rejection that mentioned character. There was only a polite note saying the position had been filled, which was true, and which told him nothing. Adaeze resumed at Nsukka on a Tuesday morning in September. She arrived alone, with one bag and her certificate and 4 years of herself folded into something stronger than she had been. She walked through the university gate, and she did not cry, and she did not perform any emotion for anyone watching. She simply walked in. In her first month, she became known in the faculty for 2 things: her absolute refusal to miss a class and the quality of her arguments in tutorial sessions: precise, grounded, human. Her lecturer in constitutional law told her, privately, after a session where she had dissected a case with a clarity that silenced the room, "You think like someone who has already lived what others are only beginning to study." She said nothing. She wrote it down in the margin of her notes. Mama visited in the 2nd month. They sat together in the small campus hostel room, and Mama held both her hands and looked at her in the way that Adaeze now recognized, not as an apology, but as a reckoning, a face of a woman who loved correctly but had arranged things carelessly and was now understanding the full cost. "I should have stopped it," meaning everything. The original arrangement, the way one child had been given the road and the other had been given the tools to build roads for everyone else. "You are here now." That was all. Because she was not a person who required destruction to feel complete. She did not need her brother brought to ruin to rise. She did not spend nights imagining what he had lost, what shame had found him, what the girlfriend's departure had cost him. She thought of him rarely and without venom, the way you think of a storm that passed through and is now gone, present in memory, absent in power. She thought instead of the morning she would walk across a convocation stage of her own. She thought of the scroll she would carry. She thought of her own name, Adaeze Okonkwo, Faculty of Law, called out in a hall full of witnesses. She thought of standing on her own ground, built entirely from her own hands, and how no single person in that hall would be able to say, "I made this possible. She owes this to me." She thought of what it would feel like to owe nobody, to have paid all the debts, including the ones nobody saw her pay, and to walk forward into a life that was entirely, unambiguously, irrevocably hers. That thought alone was enough. That thought was everything.